Debt. It's a lot, right?
Yeah.
It's this weight, that can feel just impossible to shake. So many options, so much jargon, honestly. It's so easy to just feel totally lost and confused, which is why we are here.
Yeah.
To help you make sense of debt relief.
Make sense of it, yeah.
So you can just take charge of your finances and, own it.
I like that. Take charge.
Take charge, yeah.
Yeah. Because there's a lot of noise.
There is, especially with debt.
Especially with debt. And today, we're focusing on insights from Peter Francis Geraci's book, The Complete Book on Bankruptcy.
Right.
As well as information directly from Geraci Law.
Absolutely.
Now, you know Geraci Law. When you look at the numbers, I mean over 50,000 five-star reviews.
Wow.
40-plus years of experience. Attorneys with a combined experience of over 600 years in bankruptcy, we've helped over 900,000 people.
That's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people. Figure out their debt relief options.
Yeah.
But here's the thing that might surprise you. We offer free consultations.
Yes.
And we encourage everyone to explore all their options.
Not just bankruptcy.
Absolutely. It's one of our core values at Geraci Law. Nice people doing nice things.
For nice people.
For nice people, exactly. And it always starts with just honesty and knowledge. Bankruptcy is the best option sometimes, but sometimes it's not. So it's really all about just empowering people to make the right choice for their own circumstances, for themselves,
Yeah. And that's where things get tricky.
Yes.
Because there's so many alternatives to bankruptcy out there.
Right.
Bill consolidation, loan modification, credit counseling, debt settlement. I mean, the list goes on and on. Are these legitimate solutions or are they just clever traps?
Yeah. It's hard to tell.
It is. It's really hard to tell. Peter Francis Geraci, he makes a pretty bold claim in his book. He says that most of these alternatives are actually fraudulent schemes. Why such a strong statement?
Well, unfortunately, it's often true. I mean, these options, they kind of dangle that promise of a quick fix, but often end up causing more financial heartache than they solve. So, take bill consolidation, for instance. It sounds great on paper, right? Combine all those payments into one lower monthly payment. Bam. Problem solved.
Right. I get the appeal, but it can't be that simple. What's the catch?
Well, the catch is that it rarely works as advertised. I mean, the lower interest rates and the extended payment terms, they often come at a cost.
Oh, okay.
You might end up paying more in interest over time, and you're still stuck with the same amount of debt.
So you're just shifting things around, not actually solving the problem.
Exactly. And it doesn't address the root cause of the issue. Chapter 13, bankruptcy, on the other hand, can actually protect your assets and stop those creditors from harassing you. It provides a structured framework for debt management legally.
So you're saying bill consolidation companies can't provide those same protections?
Exactly. I mean, they might be able to negotiate a slightly lower interest rate or extend your repayment terms. But that often leads to paying more interest overall. It's a temporary fix that can make the problem even worse in the long run.
Okay. So bill consolidation's out.
Yeah.
What about loan modification? That seems like a pretty good option, especially for homeowners struggling with their mortgage.
I mean, the idea is definitely appealing, right? I mean, lower monthly payments, that could be a huge relief.
Yeah.
The reality, though, is that banks, they often make that process incredibly difficult.
Oh.
They'll drag things out. They'll lose paperwork. They'll even offer solutions that really aren't even solutions at all.
Like, what do you mean, what kind of solutions?
Well, a common tactic is to simply extend the term of the loan. Instead of having a 30-year mortgage, now you have a 40-year mortgage.
Right.
Monthly payments lower, sure, but you end up paying way more in interest over the life of the loan.
So you're essentially kicking the can down the road and making the problem worse.
Exactly. And on top of that, there are scammers out there that specifically target homeowners that are desperate. They pose as loan modification specialists, take people's money, deliver absolutely nothing.
That's awful. So loan modification, while it sounds good, it also carries a lot of risk. What about credit counseling?
Right.
At least you're getting advice from experts, right?
You would think so, right? But unfortunately, a lot of these credit counseling firms, they're wolves in sheep's clothing. Some are straight up scams, posing as law firms or being run by unethical lawyers.
Really?
More interested in profit than helping people.
So how do you tell the legitimate ones from the bad apples?
That is a great question. It's all about vigilance. Do your research. A few red flags. Demanding large upfront fees before providing any services.
Okay.
Pressuring you into a debt management plan without explaining the risks. Or guaranteeing they can eliminate your debt very quickly and easily. Those are all signs to run the other way.
Okay, got it. Be wary, do your homework, And don't be afraid to just walk away if something feels off. What about debt settlement? That seems pretty straightforward. You negotiate with your creditors to pay less than what you owe. Where's the trap there?
The trap lies in the debt settlement companies themselves. I mean, a lot of them, they'll collect money up front, and then they fail to negotiate anything with your creditors.
So they're essentially stealing from people who are already struggling with debt. That's just awful.
It's predatory, and it's a huge problem. I mean, there have been high-profile cases like Legal Helpers Debt Resolution. They stole over $50 million
Wow.
from people trying to get out of debt.
That's unbelievable.
It's terrible. And sadly, even when these scammers are caught, the lawyers involved face very minimal consequences, and they often just pop up under a different name.
It's discouraging to hear that these practices are so common. So all of these alternatives, bill consolidation, loan modification, credit counseling, debt settlement, they all come with some pretty serious risks.
Yeah.
What makes bankruptcy different?
The crucial difference is that bankruptcy offers legal protection and a very clear path forward. It's a formal process with very established rules and safeguards. Those other options can't stop late fees or lawsuits or foreclosures. They can't protect you from those creditors the way that bankruptcy can.
So while the other options might seem tempting on the surface, they often create more problems than they solve. Bankruptcy, on the other hand, offers a structured and legally sound way to address that overwhelming debt.
That's right.
Okay, so let's talk about the different types of bankruptcy. I know there's Chapter 7 and Chapter 13.
Yes.
But what's the difference? Which one's right for whom?
That's a great question. The answer really depends on your individual circumstances and your financial goals. Let's start with Chapter 7, which is often called liquidation bankruptcy.
Liquidation. That sounds a little scary. What exactly does that mean?
It means that in some cases, non-exempt assets might be sold to repay creditors. But it's not as daunting as it sounds. Chapter 7 is designed to discharge most unsecured debts, like credit card debt, medical bills, personal loans, giving you a clean slate.
So you wouldn't owe anything on those debts anymore.
Right. It's a fresh start. It's a chance to rebuild your financial foundation.
That sounds amazing. But what about things like mortgages and car loans? I mean, those are secured debts, right?
Exactly. And those are treated a bit differently under Chapter 7.
Okay.
You have a few options. You can surrender the asset to the creditor, reaffirm the debt if you want to keep the asset, or redeem the asset by paying fair market value.
So there's some flexibility depending on your goals and what you want to keep. Okay, so Chapter 7 sounds like it could be a good fit for someone with a lot of unsecured debt, but maybe not a lot of assets they want to hold on to. What about Chapter 13?
Chapter 13, also known as reorganization bankruptcy. That's a more structured approach. It allows you to repay some or all of your debts over a 3 to 5 year period.
So it's not a complete discharge like Chapter 7, but it offers a way to get back on track financially without losing your home or your car.
Precisely. It's a great option for people with a steady income who want to keep those assets,
Yeah.
regain control of their finances.
Okay. This is really helpful. But I'm guessing there are some misconceptions about bankruptcy. What are some of the biggest myths you encounter?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, bankruptcy has kind of a bad rap, you know?
Yeah.
People think it's going to destroy their credit, like forever,
Right.
make it impossible to buy a house, rent an apartment.
Yeah, it's a scary thought. So what's the reality? What actually happens to your credit score when you file for bankruptcy?
It's not a pretty picture at first, I'll be honest. I mean, bankruptcy, it does show up on your credit report. Chapter 7 hangs around for 10 years, Chapter 13 for 7.
Okay, so that's a long time. Does that mean your credit is basically toast for that whole period?
Not necessarily. It definitely takes a hit initially, but the impact, it fades over time. And here's the thing. A lot of people filing for bankruptcy already have pretty poor credit due to mispayments and high debt.
So in a way, filing for bankruptcy is a chance to, like, hit the reset button,
Yeah,
finally address the root cause of the bad credit, which is the overwhelming debt.
exactly. I mean, by tackling that debt head on, you're actually taking a step towards improving your creditworthiness
Okay,
in the long run.
interesting.
Once you file, those debts are either discharged or they're restructured, which improves your debt-to-income ratio,
Right.
which is a key factor in your credit score.
So it's not a life sentence for your credit.
Right.
It's a chance to start fresh and rebuild.
Exactly. And you can help that rebuilding process along by using secured credit cards responsibly, managing your finances wisely, and just making those consistent on-time payments.
Right.
Over time, your score will recover.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've tackled that credit score myth. What about another big fear? Losing all your stuff when you file for bankruptcy. People imagine like losing their homes, their cars,
Yeah.
everything.
I understand that fear. It's natural. But it's important to remember that bankruptcy laws are designed to protect certain assets. We call them exempt assets.
What kind of assets are we talking about?
It varies by state, but it usually includes, a certain amount of equity in your home, equity in your car, personal belongings, retirement accounts, tools you need for your work.
So you're not left with absolutely nothing. You get to keep the essentials.
That's right, the bankruptcy trustee.
Right.
The person overseeing your case will determine what's exempt and what's not.
Okay. And what about those non-exempt assets? What happens to those?
In some cases, those assets might be sold to repay creditors. But again, it's not as drastic as it sounds. I mean, we at Geraci Law, we have extensive experience in bankruptcy law. And our goal is to protect as much of your property as possible. We know how to maximize your exemptions, make sure you're treated fairly throughout that whole process.
Okay, so while the thought of losing anything can be unsettling, it's reassuring to know that there are professionals who can guide you and advocate for your best interests.
Absolutely. Now, let's talk about something that I think is often overlooked, which is that emotional aspect of bankruptcy. I mean, it's a big life event.
Right.
And there's a lot of shame and stigma attached to it.
I can imagine. People probably feel like they've failed,
Yeah.
that it's somehow their fault,
Yeah, it's a common reaction, unfortunately. But it's so important to remember that bankruptcy is often the result of circumstances that are beyond our control.
Right.
Job loss, medical emergency, divorce. I mean,
Yeah.
these things can happen to anyone.
It's not a reflection of someone's character or work ethic.
Exactly. It's a financial tool. It's a legal process designed to help people get back on their feet. And I think it's crucial to separate your self-worth from your financial situation. I mean, bankruptcy doesn't define you as a person.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree. We need to normalize these conversations about financial struggles. Let people know that they're not alone in this.
Yeah. We need to break down that stigma and encourage that open and honest dialogue about money. If you're feeling overwhelmed or ashamed or just need somebody to talk to, reach out.
Yeah.
Talk to a friend,
Yeah.
a family member, or seek professional guidance from a therapist or a financial counselor.
And remember, we at Geraci Law, we approach every client with compassion and understanding. We're here to guide you through this difficult time and help you come out stronger on the other side.
Yeah. It's about rebuilding, not just financially, but emotionally as well.
Okay, so we've talked about the impact on your credit score, the concerns about losing assets, and the emotional toll of bankruptcy. It's a lot to process.
It is. But we want to emphasize that bankruptcy is not the end. It's a new beginning. It's an opportunity to shed that overwhelming debt, rebuild your credit, and create a more stable future.
It's about taking control, making a plan, and moving forward.
And we're here to help every step of the way.
Okay, that's a great place to pause. We've covered a lot of ground so far, but there's still more to explore.
We'll be right back to wrap up our discussion.
Okay, so we are back. And, we've dug into all the nuts and bolts of bankruptcy, all the different types, the pros and cons, how it all works. But now I'm kind of curious about the bigger picture. Bankruptcy isn't just a legal process, right? I mean, it feels like it kind of reflects some of these larger issues that are happening in society.
Yeah, you're hitting on something really important. I mean, bankruptcy is often a symptom of just economic inequality, predatory lending practices, lack of financial literacy.
Right.
And it kind of creates this cycle that traps so many people.
It's almost like the system is kind of designed to set people up for failure.
Well, there's definitely an element of that, I think. I mean, think about the messages we're bombarded with constantly, the advertising, pushing us to spend beyond our means, credit card companies dangling those tempting rewards, payday lenders targeting those who are most vulnerable. And then there's the whole student loan debt crisis, which is a whole other conversation.
Right. It's a recipe for disaster for so many people.
It is.
And when people do fall into debt, they're often met with judgment and shame instead of support and understanding.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, we need to shift that narrative. Financial setbacks, I mean, they can happen to anybody,
Right.
regardless of income or education. It's not a character flaw.
It's not. We need to foster a culture of financial literacy and responsibility, starting from a young age, I think. We need to equip people with the knowledge and skills to make sound financial decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, financial literacy should be like a core part of education. And we need to address those systemic issues that contribute to this cycle of debt. Predatory lending practices, wage stagnation, the rising cost of living.
Right.
I mean, those are complex problems.
Yeah,
But, we can't just throw our hands up in defeat.
No, we can't.
We have to acknowledge the problem, have some honest conversations about it, and advocate for change.
We need to demand better from our elected officials, push for policies that protect consumers, and, promote financial well-being for everybody.
Yeah. And while bankruptcy can provide a lifeline for individuals, it's not the solution to the larger problem of debt in our society.
Right.
We need to tackle those root causes.
I do. Okay, so we have covered a lot of ground today. We talked about the different options for debt relief, the ins and outs of bankruptcy, the need for financial literacy, and even, those systemic factors that contribute to debt. We want to leave you with this question. If bankruptcy is a legal right designed to help people get a fresh start, why does it carry such a stigma?
It's a good question. It makes you wonder why we as a society view it as a personal failing rather than like a necessary tool. It makes you wonder, like, why do we judge people for struggling financially? Why is there all this shame associated with asking for help?
It's true. Those are questions we all need to ask ourselves. We need to challenge our own biases and assumptions about debt and financial hardship. We need to cultivate empathy and understanding. We
Absolutely.
need to create a culture where people just feel supported and empowered to overcome these financial challenges without judgment.
Absolutely. And if you are struggling with debt, please know that you're not alone. There are resources available, and there is hope for a brighter financial future.
And remember, we at Geraci Law are here to guide you every step of the way. We offer free consultations, a chance to talk to an experienced attorney, get your questions answered, and explore all your options.
Don't let debt control your life. Take control of your finances and build the future that you deserve.
Yes. Thank you for joining us for this conversation about navigating debt relief.
We hope you found it informative and empowering.
And until next time, remember, knowledge is power. And taking that first step towards financial freedom is a courageous act.